I am Vic Iyer here at CIO Summit with Gary Foote. Gary, so good to speak with you.
Thanks for having me.
The CIO Summit, it's taking in some really key tech leadership issues. I'd just like to ask, how do tech leaders, CIOs, innovate with confidence whilst also maintaining security in such an uncertain world?
I think it's a challenge. It's a good challenge, but it's definitely a challenge because if you're not, the way I've looked at it is certainly in my industry, if you're not innovating, you're actually falling behind. So I'm in competitive sports, so there's my team, there's 9 other teams, and we go out weekend after weekend competing, points, wins, prizes, and I know that my 9 counterparts, they are all innovating. And so whether that's innovating in the technology space, or whether that's innovating on the design or the performance of the car, of which the technology feeds into that, we're all moving forward. So we have to maintain pace. But part of the CIO's job is to also maintain security, right? So if we're not getting that fine balance and you start maybe going past your comfort of risk, then that's when you really need to exposure and risk is bad. So I think it's a fine balance. The way that we do it is we try to understand the risk, because I think risk is healthy as long as you're understanding it and you're understanding the area that you're prepared to go to. I think you can start to track that innovation and going to market and speaking with some of the amazing vendors that are out now, and startups are coming out with such innovative technologies. I think you can look at that and then you just do a risk analysis on it, right? And then understand, okay, am I prepared to put that into a production environment? Maybe I'm going to get a competitive advantage out of that. But from a security perspective, where am I going to get exposed? Is it an exposure I'm comfortable with? And if it's not, what are my mitigations? The mitigation isn't always just don't innovate. The mitigation might be, hey, I can go forward with this, but I'm going to need some vendor help or some expertise help to make sure I'm covering off that risk.
Yeah, and I think it kind of leads to the next question, really, because we are in an incredible moment for technology with the era of AI looming, if it's already started in many sectors. I'd just like to get a perspective from you on what you've learned with your work with generative AI or AI more generally. Are there any insights you could share with the wider IT community?
Yeah, I think AI is such a broad term now, and I think we're bouncing it around to kind of sum up a very, very wide range of technologies. In its basic form, Formula One has had predictive AI in a loose form for a decade now. And that is where we're pulling in a bunch of data and we're using mathematical models to churn that data and give out some predictive analytics. Is that AI? I think some people would argue it was, and some people would argue it wasn't. What we've seen is the mass adoption of some of those technologies, and the LLMs that we're seeing, they do have an impact. In our world, we're using AI or forms of that technology to have another opinion, if that makes sense. So we definitely don't use it for a specific answer. And there's a term, a lot of people are bouncing around. Will it replace jobs? Will it complement jobs? We're in camp 2 for sure. So we look at it and we say it's just another tool in your toolbox. So we try to not be solving problems before they exist with technology-led solutions. So what we try and do is the business comes to us as transformational stakeholders to say we've got a bunch of business problems and we're saying, we got solutions. Maybe there's some traditional solutions. Maybe there's some very cutting-edge solutions of which AI and LLMs and Gen AI are part of them. But it's making sure you're assigning the right solution to solve the problem. Because I think there is a nervousness, and actually I think boardrooms are guilty of this, where CEOs are on the AI bandwagon right now, and they're like, I need AI in my company. It's going to solve some problems, and it's just saying, well, let's take a step back. Yes, it might solve one of your problems, but it might be there's a much easier solution or a less risk solution. We're just talking about risk.
Yeah.
We know AI gets things wrong. We've seen that as LinkedIn every day is covered in examples of where somebody asks ChatGPT a question and it gives a horrifically terrible answer that's wrong. So it's like understanding its limitations and saying, is it a tool that we can align to a problem? If it is, great. And that's how we're using it.
Yeah, and really fascinating times ahead with the technology. But I'd like to go into a slightly different topic, which is IT leadership. Our State of the CIO 2024 study found that 85% now agree that the CIO role is becoming a business change maker. I'd just like to get your perspective on that, and how do you see it developing?
It's a good question. I think the way I look at it, and maybe not everyone would agree with this, I think digital transformation, a term that again has been bounced around in a while, and business transformation, they're almost like the same thing now. And I think because of that, the role of the CIO has elevated itself up by osmosis almost. So there are some companies that understood this early on, and there's been a lot of events over the last 5 years where there are boardrooms where we have speakers talking about how does the CIO get a seat at the table. That's been a topic we've seen a lot. I think the CIO just has a seat at the table now because business transformation, i.e. where CEOs are tasked with by their investors, by their customers, by their stakeholders to transform a business to keep up with the market or bring in additional revenue or make efficiencies. They are understanding now they can only do that really with technology. Technology underpins it all. In my world, we could run a race car if we had to 10 years ago with virtually no technology. We had the technology, but if it all came crashing down, we would still run a race car. Today, the race car does not run if the technology stack's not working. We cannot bring new innovations to our race car, whether that's aerodynamic performance or reliability, without the technology behind it. And so the CIO role, whether boardrooms were supportive of that move or not, is now a change maker. Maybe there's some industries that don't see that, but they will. They'll see it. It's coming.
It's coming, yeah, definitely.
Coming.
I also want to look at the role of sustainability in the IT world now, because that's getting more and more focus. Mm-hmm. And is that something that's coming into your role? And if so, how?
Well, it's interesting. So my role at Haas, my title is very much Chief Information Officer. But over the years, as a member of the executive team, I've taken on some different tracks. And one of the tracks I've taken on is ESG. So I've got very heavily involved in the sustainability world. And I also look after facilities now. So I'm kind of starting to stitch these worlds together. And there's this huge synergy because, again, technology is a change maker. So when we look at, there's not just technology choices. So as a CIO, as a digital leader, you can make technology choices. Vendors are starting to understand the customer's demands and starting to make sustainable offerings, sustainable choices. They're starting, I don't know if we're allowed to name drop, but there's one hardware vendor that we're working with on end user compute, and they are very proud of the carbon reductions they've made, of the recycling and the packaging that they've made, and they talk about it in their offering. Here's our product and its technical capability. Here's how much it costs, and here's the things we're doing to make this a responsible choice. And I love that. That's like a track that you're doing. But I also think that outside of the technology platform choices, technology can be a huge benefit in terms of other areas of the business trying to become sustainable. Maybe a good example would be, we're looking at some software to help us reduce our carbon footprint for transportation and for logistics. So Formula One, 24 races a year. We're bouncing all over the globe via air, via sea, via road, and we take an awful lot of freight. And there's technology now that can help us. And as a transformational leader, you can offer this up as a solution to the logistics group or the travel group and say, hey, software can start to help you make sensible choices on what you take where, how it gets there, what aviation fuel do you use, and that's outside of the digital sort of stack in terms of technology for the digital group. It's out into the business. There's your change maker, using technology to help meet whatever the business's carbon reductions are, or whether there's particular governance or regulatory requirements they have. People are looking over the wall at the IT department and they're saying, hey, can you guys come help us with this? And guess what? We can.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. So
You're
interesting
welcome.
to hear about interface between technology and Formula One. Thanks again.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.